So good afternoon, everyone. So real pleasure to be with all of you today. We are hosting this amazing panel in the framework of EIC Skilling Club, which is a program financed by the European Commission. Kaly, you are part of it.
We are indeed.
And Kaly Capital is also part of the members, so it's amazing. So for those who don't know EIC Skilling Club, so it's financed, as I said, by the European Commission. So we are supporting European deep tech companies in various sectors. So we have FoodTech, agri-tech, smart mobility, next-gen computing, so many other sectors, and supporting deep tech companies in big Series A, Series B. So first of all, maybe my name is Valentin Marin, so I'm part of Bpifrance. We are the French Public Investment Bank, so we support French companies, so we invest in French companies, but we also support European companies, and we also have other activities in other regions. So really pleased to welcome you today for this discussion. So we have today Morrow, partner from Kaly Capital, so thank you for joining. We have Kaly Chatakondu, Global Commercial Director at Arboria, one of our top scaling club company in our program. So maybe we should start with a short introduction. I will give you, let's say, around 2 minutes per people. So maybe, Ali, you can start to introduce yourself and also Kaly Capital. Thank you.
Sure. I'll be brief in that that's the least interesting part of this panel, hopefully. I'm Morrow. Kaly Capital is a venture fund. We're exclusively food and ag tech focused. We primarily invest around Series A, which for us means sort of tickets of 2 to 10 million, a little bit more mature, a little bit more de-risked. Typically, there's a bit of revenue, signs of traction, and we've been around for about a decade. We started in Singapore circa 2014, so really quite early and embryonic in terms of the ecosystem. And we are European Investment Fund backed, and our second fund is very much based between London and Singapore and investing primarily in the EU.
Thank you, Ali. Kaly.
And I'm Kaly Chatakondu, so chemist by background, but spent the last 30 years in major multinational food ingredient companies in senior commercial roles before joining Arboria a few months ago, and fascinated by the technology, which is why I joined. Arboria, what we do is we turn carbon dioxide into food on barren land. So we make proteins, we make natural colors, and we make bioactive nutrient concentrates all on barren land through the industrial photosynthesis of microalgae. It is such an efficient process that, in theory, you could make as much food in an area the size of Greater New York as the whole of Africa. And thanks to help from the EIC Scaling Club, we've got to the stage of building a fully fledged demo facility in Lisbon in Portugal and looking to build our first commercial facility next year.
Great. Thank you, both of you. So I would have some questions for you. So let's try to be open. We can have open discussion, but maybe first, I know that, Ali, we had this discussion a few days ago about the European ecosystem in the food industry. So we discussed about regulation, about food safety, security. So can you give us some takeaways, insight about it?
Sure. I think, we've been around for 10 years. The ecosystem has changed a lot in that time. EU regulations have been a strong tailwind, by and large, for the food sector. However, there are realities as to how that's changing. I think sustainability, regulations, net zero targets, those kind of goals, when we see companies with those aims, they're obviously positive, and that's the society and ecosystem we want to enable. But from a revenue generation standpoint, we don't rely on that alone in terms of the kind of business models we look for. And I think it's been a maturing of the ecosystem over the last decade in terms of, there's a North Star in terms of where we want to go and the food system we want to create, both in terms of quantity and quality. And Europe has a major role to play in that, both for our own food security, but also because so much of the best food culture, biasly, has been born here. However, getting a company to survive the many, and there isn't just one in our world, sort of valleys of death, requires a lot of thoughtfulness around how you get from one stage to the next, and not fully rely on venture funding. Per the last panel, you want, as a company, to be able to choose your own destiny, and how your cap table gets structured plays a role in that.
No, absolutely. I think the whole food ecosystem around food security is quite crucial. We know that there isn't enough fertile land in the world at the moment, and it's changing because of global warming. It's changing also because of contamination from microplastics. And often that fertile land isn't in the country that you need it to be in. So you only need to look at the issues in Ukraine, etc., to see how dependent certain countries can be on their own food system. So technologies and innovation that can operate and provide food security within a country can be an excellent sort of preparation for the future. And that's essentially, and particularly if that technology can work with local crops as well, in terms of increasing the fertility of the soil in the area, but also provide an alternative food source as well for the population in that country.
Indeed, so we had this discussion about how your technology could help governments, to address food security, safety. So that's great, yeah.
No, absolutely. I think at the end of the day, food security is something on the horizon in the West. It's a necessity in the East. I mean, we have growing populations and a shrinking landmass. So the technologies and the companies behind that, the companies need scalable technologies that will allow them to make cost-effective food in those regions. We have large agricultural companies that are looking at the problem of how to continue feeding their customers, the population, over the next 20 years. Now, that's not going to come by deforestation. I mean, statistically, I understand that an area the size of 17 football fields of forests are cut down every minute to make fertile land to grow more food. That's not a sustainable ecosystem. So technologies that can disrupt that, can work with the crops in different countries, can work with the agricultural community. That's going to be crucial for the future, and it's going to become more and more crucial for every region of the world.
Thank you, Kaly. Maybe if we look back, so we had also this discussion. I mean, you are investors, so how do you see the market compared to 5-10 years ago? So it was a very interesting discussion we had. So.
Maybe leaping off of your last point, and it pertains to your question, which is, the fascinating part about food and ag investing is trying to figure out the picture. If anyone played Snakes and Ladders as a child, there's no sort of one way to get companies to grow and get companies to market. And fundamentally, to your point, if you look at the global food system, it is a global food system. It is not reliant to a single region. We are heavily reliant, certainly on commodity markets that are primarily in the South. That is how we've built most of our value chains. And so how you transition that, or the conversation around regenerative agriculture, you're betwixt and between, to some degree, market size. You need to get to a certain volume in order to have economies of scale, buying power, selling power. And then on the other hand, if you try to do it small scale, the premium market is so niche. And so I think a lot of what's changed, or perhaps the education that we've all lived on the investor side, is by and large our world is an M&A market. And therefore, you are in a very close dance, ideally, with your potential exit targets for the companies. And so how you think about getting adopted at an early stage, is it tech transfer? Is it small scale sales? How do you distribute that across various customers so that you're not reliant on one? Is much more of the learning, I think, and the sales process to de-risk businesses. And with that, how you think about whether it be the ag side or the food side, that they all have different shapes and kind of momentum to them. So that's one point. I think the obvious one that most people know is that there's been a big reset within our category. There was a lot of feverish investing and valuations and otherwise during sort of the COVID period, which has now come back down to earth. And it kind of pertains to the last point, which is the traction and valuations were very much out of step. And by traction, I mean revenues. And so as opposed to this is what the world needs, and therefore we should all back in, the technology is complete wonderment. environment and getting to fall in love with that, we've all had to come back to quite a bit of sobriety around where you're going to get your next revenues, which is a good thing and a healthy thing for the ecosystem, but still requires a lot of dialogue back and forth and coming to something that works for both business models.
I think you're absolutely right, Charlie. I think everyone loves sustainability, but no one loves a green premium. So,
right.
The key is to square that circle. And you also mentioned an excellent point about the world being connected. The food sources come from different regions of the world. They have to be transported. They have to be connected. And we work in this connected ecosystem. You can't ignore that fact. Certainly, as Arboria, the way we've tried to overcome these challenges is to firstly segment the market into different food segments, maybe bakery, chocolate, beverage, etc., but then to partner with the multinationals that already operate in those segments. So the B2B sort of players that already operate in those segments have infrastructures in place. Now that's important because not only do they have routes to market in terms of distribution routes, development facilities already established around the world, but also, regardless of what might happen politically, we don't know what's going to happen in different regions of the world at different times. Multinationals have already got the ability to move production facilities, move production capacities around their own ecosystem. So as long as you're partnered with the correct multinationals, you have an inbuilt defense mechanism as a startup that is not too dependent on a geography. It's more dependent on the relationship and the partnership that you have with that multinational B2B player in that segment.
Thank you, Kaly. And maybe just an additional question. So I mentioned EIC Scaling Club. So you are part of it. So how do you benefit from it? How is it relevant for you?
Absolutely. I mean, the EIC Scaling Club has been crucial to our development. I think as a startup, there's a steep learning curve, and you don't know what you don't know, put it that way. So as well as obviously access to funding, there's the mentorship involved, the connections that are being made. One of the biggest challenges for a startup, or indeed any company, is not knowing which companies to connect to, although that's important, is to knowing which people in those companies to connect to. Certainly, I'm old enough to remember that you could often tell people's roles from job titles. I can't anymore. Job titles have changed a lot. They're quite creative in many cases. Finding the right person to speak to within these large multinational corporations, within the investment community, to make the connections such as venture capitalists. It's impossible to do that without the help of some organizations such as the EIC. So we're very grateful for the help. It's been, very transformational to get us to where we are.
Perfect, thank you. Maybe a follow-up question. What can we expect in the coming years? I mean, what do you think will make your company, Arboria, successful?
So I think, as I said, our strategy is very much segmenting the market and then operating with different multinational players within each of these segments. But at the end of the day, it's the consumers that are going to buy the end products. So the products that we make, whether it's the proteins, whether it's the colors, whether it's the bioactive nutrients, these products have to tie in with consumer demands. And then you look at the big themes that consumers are concerned on. They're concerned about sustainability, yes. They're concerned about food security. But nutrition and health is something that cannot be ignored at the moment. I was in San Francisco a couple of weeks ago, and the GLP-1 debate on obesity and nutritionally dense food, absolutely crucial. And if, at the end of the day, consumers are as concerned about the little things like having a plant-based milk that doesn't curdle in your coffee, having chocolate that isn't too high in sugar, as they are about the world burning. So I think startups need to be brutally realistic in the entire supply chain. And there has to be something in it for everyone down the supply chain. There has to be something in it for the multinationals, something in it for the retailers, and something in it for the consumers. And the sooner that you have that vision absolutely clear and aligned, and you can tap into that vision with the products, the prototypes that you make to demonstrate that you are fitting those niches, then the safer that you are.
Thank you, Kaly. Ali, so as an investor, so what is your long-term vision?
I'll just respond to one comment you just made there, which I think is, if you go to generalist tech conferences, the conversation around the product is king, customer is king, service your customer is not a narrative, not that we were anti-customer or not thoughtful about the customer, but I think in some ways, fundamentally, like in any category, to get something off the ground, the product is king, the customer needs to love it in some capacity, whomever that is. And if that is a major global food company, there needs to be ROI for everybody along the value chain. Which would sound like a quite mundane vision. However, I think, there's no green premium, everybody wants sustainability. There's got to be some kind of middle ground between, fundamentally we would love a regenerative, nutritious food system that is equitable, et cetera, et cetera. But in order to get that to ground, I think usefully we're all spending much more time in the middle so far as what makes that happen. How are you actually going to ladder that up to reality? How do you get companies that are providing enough return on investment for the various players? And there's a lot of magic that's still there in terms of the early ecosystem, but novelty requires a plan. And so I think the vision is for us to have a closer dynamic with startups that have that mentality and be able to take it to scale.
Great, thank you. We still have a few minutes. I should have one question for you, Kaly. So I know that you are preparing Series A, so in terms of next milestone, can you tell us more?
Sure, absolutely. So we have a one-to-one demo facility in Lisbon at the moment that has validated all the techno-economics, and we are indeed going to be starting Series A funding to build our first commercial facility also in Portugal. The idea behind the facility is that it'll be a 3-hectare facility and would take us to profitability with a payback of 2.5 years. And that is important for a couple of reasons. It's not only about the technology and the sale of the products from that facility for our multinational partners. It's also to show that the capital investment, that there's a return on the capex. Too often technologies are great at a certain scale, but involve enormous amounts of capex when you scale up. The key thing that we're focused on at Arboria is to make a technology that's modular, so that you can build and scale up and is capex light, so that you can actually produce product and have a good return on capex in a fast space and time. And therefore you can expand sensibly, safely, and anywhere in the world, because the technology literally only needs carbon dioxide and sunlight, so which is usually around everywhere. Perhaps not in the UK so much these days with sunlight, but yes, around in most parts of the world.
Great, thank you. Ali, do you want to highlight something else?
I mean, I think the only comment that we touched on, right, is, why Europe? Why Europe for this kind of innovation? And it's always been part of the founding thesis of the firm that Europe has something very unique and different. And I think part of that is in the cultures, so far as, again, food history and food culture in Europe is unique. It's delicious. It's some of the best in the world in terms of where other cultures have taken inspiration, and it's been maintained. It's some of the oldest storied food products, the history of wine, the history of cheese, et cetera, et cetera. And I mean, we're not investing at a purely product analog level, but I think founders who've been inculcated with that culture and history have something quite unique about them. And so we continue to be very bullish on founders based and raising and scaling in Europe.
Great. Thank you. I think we are on time. So thank you so much for joining us. And thank you for this great discussion. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.